Good afternoon. Welcome to the July 1st, 2025 DVMUG Zoom meeting. As always, we'll prevent some news, followed by some videos. I'll slip in a little miscellany, and we'll go to questions and answers, and to the social hour. This week's news. I show this slide just to remind you that it's on the BBS and that you can get to any of these news items by clicking on the URLs that are presented because it's in a PDF form. Following are synopses on these news items. Germany tells Apple to remove DeepSeek from the App Store. By William Gallagher from AppleInsider.com. DeepSeek has been declared by the German regulators to contain illegal content because of its security issues, and the local government wants it removed from the App Store and from the Google Play Store. DeepSeek is a Chinese generative AI app that jumped to the top of the US App Store, was famously developed for a fraction of what OpenAI spent on the ChatGPT, and was even been politely praised by Tim Cook. However, it also comes with severe security issues, and this is what prompted Germany's decision. According to Reuters, Germany's Data Protection Commissioner, Mikey Camp, has asked Apple and Google to remove it after DeepSeek failed to meet requested security standards. She asked DeepSeek in May 2025 to meet requirements or to voluntarily withdraw its app, and it did neither. So therefore, the request to remove. Any comments or questions? Moving on.
What does
Apple,
this mean for us?
Yeah, what is DeepSeek?
DeepSeek is like ChatGPT. It's an AI app.
Huh.
Mhm.
It's a it's a
What?
it's a Chinese company that developed it, and they did it without all the advanced chips that they are prohibited from having.
Oh, I remember reading about
Or
that.
if when they developed it for a fraction of the money, which kind of shook up all the big guys. Like, how did they? And it's supposed to be pretty good. It's supposed to be almost as good as ChatGPT, um, they say. And I'm not sure. I read that article, and the security risks seem to be that Germany says they're unsure whether that they don't. It's similar to with TikTok. They're not. They have doubts about whether the Chinese government could have access to it. That's what I understand. Not that there's some specific violation that they know of, risk that they know of other than that.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me too, there was a news thing I saw yesterday that many of the VPNs masquerading under normal names are really owned by the Chinese, but they didn't list the names.
Hmm. The next item is that Apple again tries to cut third-party app fees to avoid the European Union fines. By Malcolm Owen from AppleInsider.com. Apple is implementing changes to its developer policies to comply with the European Union Digital Markets Act, including allowing developers to publicize offers across all channels and introducing a new fee structure for transactions outside the App Store. The new structure includes an initial acquisition fee, storage services fee, and core technology fee, with varying rates depending upon the app services utilized. The European Commission will determine if these changes are sufficient to avoid additional fines. So Apple's working to get accepted, but it's to be determined. Any comments or questions? Third item. Kenji stole my thunder. 50 years ago, a single keystroke changed Apple and the world forever. This is presented by Alex Blake, a contributor to Macworld.com. 50 years ago, it set Apple on course to become one of the most valuable companies on the planet and changed the face of computing to unfathomable ways. Yet, you've probably never even heard of what went down. It's an often overlooked moment that had incredible consequences for years to come. In 1975, Steve Wozniak invented a technology that allowed users to type on a keyboard and see the characters displayed on a screen, a revolutionary concept at that time. This innovation, combined with Steve Jobs' vision of selling the device to the masses, led to the creation of Apple I, a groundbreaking personal computer that was affordable and user-friendly. The Apple I, priced at $666.66, marked the beginning of the personal computing revolution and forever changed the way computers looked and worked. And that 666, I'm told, converts to about 2,300 today. And this is what that board looks like that Steve Wozniak debuted in the prototype Apple I.
So is that what you got for your money? Was the circuit board?
That's right. That's right. You added, as you see, a cassette-based basic programming language, simplified interaction though users had to add a power supply, a keyboard, storage system, and display to build a fully functional system.
And you had to add the cassette board. The cassette isn't built in. The circuitry isn't built in. And there were other personal computers at the time where those things were built in before the Apple I hit the market. So Apple just always likes to make the claim that they invented all this. They just came out with their version at the same time as other companies.
Yeah, I had a Timex Sinclair that I bought for 99 bucks.
That
worked with a cassette recorder.
Right, but that was later. I'm talking about 1977, 1976, 1977. There were others out there.
Yeah.
Apple was not alone, although they claimed to be.
Did those others have a display?
They had the ability to plug a display in, yes.
So this was 1975, wasn't it? Well, the slides in the articles in 1975, but this picture says 1976.
Well, he proved it to himself in 75, but in 76, this board was produced.
Oh yes, and he debuted the prototype Apple I at the Homebrew Computer Club in 1976.
Right, and if you look, it says gift of Dyson Corporation. So that went to Dyson at the time they were trying to develop the Disk 2.
So did you have to build your own box for it, like this box here?
Yes. Didn't include power supply. Didn't include keyboard.
Right.
Where was the Osborne in 76?
Osborne was a little later.
Oh.
Well, an implementation might look like this. This apparently was one implementation. Yeah, adding all those other parts.
Or what you bought was on the left, and on the right is all the other stuff that you had to put together: keyboard, case, monitor, and inside there is that board.
Right.
Right.
So no two of them look the same because you built a case. Nobody built you couldn't buy a case. You had to make it. There were no cases available to buy, right?
Right. One you'll see in the museum often is actually in a briefcase.
And the keyboards are all different because you could use whatever you want. There was no standard keyboard to purchase. There was no accessories to purchase, any of that other stuff, power supply, nothing from Apple to go with it.
And
build the kit.
Board they're showing there has something in the prototyping section. There's the upper left corner of the picture, which was supposed to let you use a 6800 instead of a 6502.
Look at those massive capacitors. Why were they so big? Had they not developed smaller ones yet?
Well, I think that's part of the power circuitry you're looking at there.
And those probably all the original ones. You wouldn't mind running on the original caps. You'd probably want to replace them.
Those are probably handling 110 volts too. I see a little a rectifier there and a big heat sink in the upper right corner of that board.
So it was all populated with memory. The memory it was all soldered on. There was no option or no, you couldn't up the memory or anything.
I believe people did memory expansion with the slot.
Now, was this considered the Apple One?
Right.
This is the Apple One they're showing.
They didn't make many of them.
Nope. And then when Steve Jobs put a program together for people to get an Apple II, they could trade in their Apple One boards, and Jobs destroyed the Apple One boards that were sent in because he didn't consider the manufacturing quality of these boards to be good enough for the reputation of the company.
I see this board is signed by Woz. Moving on.
Big bucks. Working ones you can get. They go for big bucks in the auctions. They're working.
Yep, there are even some people who have made replica boards. Woz will even sign those.
What was the operating system?
It was cassette based. You know, you could load and save from cassette, but you needed the cassette interface in that slot. It didn't come with the cassette interface. There was a board.
All right. This new Mac OS Tahoe feature solves a common Mac complaint. Many people, that complaint being that many people save a large amount of menu bar items and apps in their menu bar. With the notch taking up a prime amount of space right in the middle, that creates some spacing issues. And this is presented by Michael Burkhart of 9 to 5 Mac. With Mac OS 26 Tahoe this year, Apple introduced a new control center. Of course, it implements the new liquid glass design seen across the entire ecosystem, but it also brings a brand new feature to the Mac for the first time, that is third-party integrations. Third-party controls are added. Now, with Mac OS 26 Tahoe, third-party apps can create control center applets, allowing for quick controls and smaller interactions to be accessible outside of the menu bar. Plus, you can achieve these interactions without the need to open a whole app. Your display feels even larger with the transparent menu bar, and you can have more ways to customize the controls and layout in the menu bar and control center, even those from third parties. This is a pretty big addition, though it does come with the caveat of requiring developers to support the new APIs in Mac OS Tahoe, and existing menu bar items can't quickly be adopted to Control Center, and at least as of now. And those APIs are Application Programming Interface. It's a set of rules and protocols that allows each different software applications to communicate and exchange data with each other. It acts as a bridge, so to speak, enabling developers to use existing functionalities without needing to understand the underlying code.
So on my MacBook Air, I'm running a little app called Say No to Notch, and it just moves the menu bar down like that much so that it's below the notch, so none of the menu bar icons get blocked. And I don't miss that little tiny bit of screen one little bit. It works really well.
I use a piece of software called Bartender, and it hides the menu bar until you move your arrow up to where the menu bar was, and then it'll put it on the picture. But it doesn't stay populated except when you're using it, so it doesn't take any space.
So when it does populate, it's below the notch, so the apps don't get hidden behind it.
Yes.
That's cool.
What notch are you talking about?
The camera notch at the top of the MacBook.
Oh,
Recent MacBooks have,
okay.
like the equivalent of the the dynamic island, I guess, on a phone.
Yeah. This doesn't apply to iMacs. Only laptops and MacBook Air, MacBook Pro.
Okay.
Doesn't the 24-inch iMac doesn't have the notch?
I'm trying to remember. I've got one, but
It's where the selfie camera is.
I think it does.
yeah, it does, by golly, and I do use Bartender on there. Yeah.
I don't think the iMac has a notch.
No,
Yeah,
mine
yeah.
doesn't.
The 24-inch iMac has a notch.
Yeah, it does. I'm so used to it, I don't even notice it.
I don't recall it. I just
Yeah,
went up and don't recall the notch on it.
only the older MacBook Airs had the camera in the frame itself. The newer ones have it right on the screen. It's like quarter of an inch by about an inch and a quarter.
Are we talking about the iMacs?
No. The
The
MacBook
Airs,
Air.
the Pros, the iMacs, and all the new ones have a notch.
My 2021 iMac has the camera in the frame.
I think that the new iMacs have the camera in the frame as well.
Uh-huh.
I'll have to go to my sister-in-law's and look.
Uh-huh.
Well, Rick's got a 24-inch iMac, and he says it has a notch.
I have to go and look. I'm not near that machine right now. But I'm pretty sure it does have a notch, yeah.
This M1 MacBook Pro first series has a notch. First notch I've had, so I was not happy with having it.
Okay, well, we're moving on to the videos. This screen again is to just remind you that these are on the BBS in PDF form, so you can click on the URLs to rewatch the videos at your convenience.
They're in the chat also if you got here before the meeting started, right at the beginning. If you came after the meeting started, then I'll have to put them back in there if you want.
Well, first video is by Jerry Rosenzweig of MacMost.com, creating dynamic lists on a Mac. Here are 5 ways you can create lists on your Mac that allow you to reorder lines and to indent items.
Hi, this is Gary with MacMost.com. Let's take a look at creating dynamic lists on your Mac. So something that computers should do well is allow you to work with dynamic lists. That would be a list of text where you can move the lines up and down easily and also indent them easily. But surprisingly, there's no one app that does this really well. Let's take a look at the options that come with your Mac. So first, let's go to the Notes app. So in the Notes app, you can create 2 types of lists. Let's look at the most basic kind of list first. I'll just type a few lines of text as an example, like that. And let's convert that into a list. If I select all of that and I go to the Style button here, you can see I've got bulleted list, dashed list, and numbered list. All of these will basically work the same when you're trying to move lines around. So let's choose numbered list. And here I've got everything now as a numbered list. Now, if I want to reorder these items, I can try to do it by dragging, but it doesn't work very well. For instance, if I select this text and I try dragging it up and down, it really doesn't work very well. If I try the whole line, it doesn't really work very well. If I try dragging from this number, it doesn't really work. But I can reorder with copy and paste, and that's true for everything I'm going to show you. But copy and paste isn't a very efficient way to do this. However, there's a special command that you've got here in Numbers with your cursor blinking in any line. If you go to Format and then look to Move Item, you can move up and down using Control, Command, and then the up or down arrows. So this line I can move down with Control, Command, down. And you can see how it moves down there. Being a numbered list, the numbers remain constant there. So the lines are moving and the numbers are changing to match the order they're in now. I can just Control, Command, and move things up or down as I like, making notes a really good option for dynamic lists. In addition, you can indent using Tab, which is going to be true for almost all of the examples I'm going to show you. And you can keep indenting or you can outdent using Shift Tab. But one problem is if you outdent too much, then it breaks the list like that. However, there's a better option. If you go to Format here and look under Indentation, there's Increase and Decrease, which is Command and then the square brackets on the keyboard. This is another common thing we're going to see in a lot of apps. Now, if I use this, it appears to work just like pressing Tab. And Command and then the left bracket will work like using Shift Tab, except it won't go past the beginning there. So I can go in and out as much as I want without worrying about breaking the list. So Notes has a really good set of keyboard shortcuts for dynamic lists, but it doesn't do very well when you want to use the pointer to drag things around. Notes also has the ability to do a checklist by using this button here. And a checklist could use all those same commands. So you can go up and down like that. You can indent like that. But in addition to that, you can also check the items, which is really handy. And you can go to Format here, and then you can use Shift Command U to uncheck or check like that. Plus under Format More, you've got Check All, Uncheck All, Move Check to the bottom, and Delete Checked. In addition, under Notes Settings, you have the ability to automatically sort the checked items. So checklists are a unique feature here of the Notes app. By the way, if you find these videos valuable, consider joining the more than 2,000 others that support MacMost at Patreon. You get exclusive content, course discounts, and more. You can read about it at macmost.com/Patreon. Now you would think Pages can do dynamic lists even better than Notes, but it's not really the case. So here I am in Pages and I'll add some lines. And now I can select all of these lines here, and under Format, I can go to Bulletin Lists. And one thing Pages does better is it gives you many more options for lists. For instance, you can do very complex numbered lists like using Harvard format and all of that. Let's just select standard numbered list here. And you can see I have a lot of control over the formatting, the amount of indentation, the size of the numbers, and all sorts of things. I can even a bullet using any characters I want, even images. So for the look of the list, Pages is the clear winner over Notes. But unfortunately, there's no keyboard shortcut to move lines up or down. You just can't do it. You can use cut and paste, of course, and you can drag. Dragging is a little tricky. If you were to select the line like this and try to drag this, it drags the text. So you end up getting things like that when you drag around. However, if you just click to select the number or bullet here to the left and drag that, then you get this interface that allows you to reorder the lines. You can see with that blue line exactly where the new line is going to go, and with the little triangle there, you can see the indentation. So you can put this 3
Uh-oh, we're frozen.
It froze for me.
What happened?
Lee, are you there? You're frozen. I lost you, Lee. It's frozen. I see Lee.
Lee is frozen too.
Lee's frozen. The whole thing's frozen. Lee, all including.
It's his Wi-Fi.
He's back. Lee's back, but not the screen share. Can you hear us, Lee? We lost you there. And you're muted. You're also muted.
Actually being able to dynamically manipulate it while editing. Now, of course, there is an app that's specifically for lists on your Mac, and that's Reminders. So how well does that work when you want to move items around? Well, here in this Reminders list, I can easily add new items by just clicking in there or clicking the plus button, and I could add one like that, return, and keep adding, and get lines like that. I can easily reorder them by dragging just to the left of the checkbox right there. So it's easy to reorder. Also, clicking to the left of the checkbox selects the entire item. And I can use Command and then the square brackets to indent pretty easily. And you can use the other square bracket to go back. You do have a lot of extra features and reminders, like for instance, the ability to create sections and then have the items under different sections. So I can now drag, for instance, these into different sections like that to order things. You can also sort the list very easily here, something that's not easy to do in Notes or Pages. So I could sort by title here like that. And you can see now it's alphabetical. Another thing you could do that's really interesting in Reminders is you can have multiple columns here. So this appears to be just one list, but if I do View as Columns, I now have this as one column, and I can add another column like that, name it something like that, add an item to this, and you can see I've got these multiple columns for this list here. They're actually another way to view sections, but you can move items between the columns very easily, and that's a whole new dimension to a dynamic list. Now you would think that Numbers is good at creating dynamic lists, but it actually falls kind of short. So let's create a new Numbers document here, and let's go and get rid of the headers here, and just going to delete the first column and first row like that. And I could easily create a list, but there's really no way to indent. You would maybe create another column and then move things over, although that might be useful. And you can't move the rows up and down with the keyboard, but you can drag them up and down pretty easily. It's hard to insert something new between different lines like you can in every other option we've looked at, but you can click here and add row above, add row below. So you can do it. It just takes a few more steps, but you do have good sorting options. And of course you can create multiple columns. So the list can actually consist of more than one piece of data. Like you could have a date or a number or something associated with each piece of text and then sort by whichever column you want. So if what you want is really more of a table than an actual list with just one item for each line, then Numbers, of course, would be the clear winner there. But you could also use tables in Pages, which borrows most of that functionality from Numbers and works in a pretty similar way. And finally, let's look at an unlikely candidate here. Let's look at Keynote, which is for making presentations. But you can actually use it to make lists in an interesting way. I'm going to choose a basic white theme here, and then I'm going to switch the view to Outline View. With the Outline View, you get something that looks just like a list here on the left, but you're actually creating slides. So, for instance, I can create a slide like that and then return and create another slide. And I can create basically a list of slides. And on the left, it looks like a regular list. If I look at the slide, you can see the title of each slide is actually here in the title part. If I were to go down for a new slide there, but then tab to indent and then put something here, you could see how it actually puts it as bullet items on that slide like that, which is really interesting. I could even indent like that. The subtitle kind of gets left out. So one thing you may want to do is go to View, Edit Slide Layouts, and then go to Title and Bullets, which is what we're using, select the subtitle and get rid of it. And now I'll click done here. And now these slides no longer have that subtitle there getting in the way. And then for this first one, I'm actually going to go and change. I'll click on the background of the slide here and change the layout to title in bullets like that. So they're all using title in bullets, and they'll all basically display the main piece of text here as the title, and then any sub items as bullet items underneath. Now, the interesting thing about this is you can actually drag to reorder these very easily here like that. You can even view as a light table and see these as individual cards. So this is kind of like making a dynamic list that's a set of index cards, and you can flip through them, reorder them as you like. You can see I can just drag these around like that. I can even zoom in here a little more if I want to be able to see the text in them and very easily change the order of things. If I want to change what's on the side, I can double click, go back in, and you can see I get the outline here. I can reorder things. I can work with all the text here on the left, but I could also go to the slide and work with it here. You can see how it shows the change right there. So Keynote offers a really cool option that is different than all of the rest. So hopefully, if you're looking to create dynamic lists on your Mac, I've given you an overview of the different ways you can do it with different apps that you get with your Mac. Hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching.
Well, any comments or questions?
I was trying to do outlining in notes when I started this class for my note taking, and I found that you can do what looks like an outline, but it doesn't really work like an outline. So is there a way in notes to drag children with parents? Anybody know?
I don't know.
I know there's an app that used to been around for a long time, and they used to include it on the Mac for free a long time called Omni Outliner.
I actually own Omni Outliner.
Yeah.
But I found an app called Craft. Does anybody use Craft? It's a note-taking app. It's similar to Notion, but it's more Mac-like. And that's what I'm using now.
All right, we'll move on. Second video is by Suraj Raval from howinfinity.com. How to use the Measure app in an iPhone. The new Measure app in iOS 12 allows you to measure anything on iPhone without a tape measure or a ruler. The app also includes a level where you can easily check if something is level and straight.
In this video, I wanted to show you how to use the new Measure app in iOS 12. So if you've updated to iOS 12, the Measure app should automatically be installed. If you haven't updated, make sure you get the iOS 12 update to get the Measure app. So let's launch the Measure app and I'll show you a couple of things in there. So usually for the very first time when you open the app, it's going to ask you to start moving your iPhone around. So I'm just going to move my iPhone left to right here, and then it should calibrate. So now it's ready to measure. So just to show you a couple of things with the app, on the very bottom, there's a measure tool and there is a level tool. So I'll show you the measure tool first, and then we'll jump into the level tool. So again, usually every time you come to the measure tool, you have to move your iPhone. Usually left to right should do it that much. In this case, it told me to slow down. So I'm going to just go ahead and pan left to right. So now I'm ready to measure. So I'm going to pull up my phone
So
here.
the video is not moving.
Start by automatically be installed. If you haven't updated, make sure you get the iOS 12 update to get the Measure app. So let's launch the Measure app and I'll show you a couple of things in there. So usually for the very first time when you open the app, it's going to ask you to start moving your iPhone around. So I'm just going to move my iPhone left to right here, and then it should calibrate. So now it's ready to measure. So just to show you a couple of things with the app, on the very bottom, there's a measure tool and there is a level tool. So I'll show you the measure tool first, and then we'll jump into the level tool. So again, usually every time you come to the measure tool, you have to move your iPhone. Usually left to right should do it that much. In this case, it told me to slow down. So I'm going to just go ahead and pan left to right. So now I'm ready to measure. So I'm going to pull up my phone here, and I basically want to start by adding a point. So let's say I wanted to measure the screen. I could go ahead and go to this corner, and then I have to press the plus sign. So if I press plus, it starts, and then I could start moving my phone to measure. So I'll go all the way to this corner, and then when I get here, I'm going to press plus one more time. And now I have that measurement here. It's going to stay here just like that. And I could always go to this point, press plus again to start a new measurement, and then go down here, and then I could let go on this corner and press plus one more time. So now I got this measurement here, and the one I measured here is already there. To clear a measurement, you just have to press clear right on top. But there's another cool thing here. If you choose a rectangle or any shape, like a square shape, and you hold the phone over it, it should recognize it. So it's saying add a rectangle. So I'm going to press the plus sign, and it's going to give me the dimensions of this shape because I pointed the phone there. So if I wanted to clear this now, all I have to do is press the clear on top, and it goes away. And that's all there is to know about the Measure app. So if I go to the Level app now, this allows you to measure if something is level. I'm going to go ahead and put it on my desk here. And when it hits 0 degrees, that means it's level, it's going to turn green. So usually you could use this to measure picture frames or anything else that you want to make sure it's level. All you got to do is put it vertical or horizontal on there. And the moment it turns green, that means you got a level. So that's how you use the Measure tool and the Level tool inside the Measure app. I hope you found this useful. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel for easy to follow tech tutorials just like this one. And I'll see you on the next video. Thanks so much for watching.
Well, any comments or questions on Measure or Level?
He could have demonstrated that last one. And also, can you use it for landscape purposes, like your yards and figuring area? I think there's another app.
You can, but you know, there's an easier way. Even if you're doing a yard, use Google Earth, and you can compute all your.
Not that accurate.
Oh, okay. I know that roofers use it for computing roofs.
Yeah, there's another app. Well, we'll look into it. Thank you. Very good.
So, did he mention that this came with iOS 12?
Yeah, this came out. That came out a while ago. It's been around.
So I have 18, so it's got to be. It has to be here, right?
Yeah,
it's called the Measure.
12 and later.
It is in here if you're updated.
Yeah. Sweep up halfway on your screen and type in Measure, and you'll find it's there.
But it won't let me measure across the wall. It says get closer.
Oh. Well, I tried it. It works for me. Third video is by Gary Rosenzweig, Mac Most, 10 Reasons Your Mac May Be Acting Strange and How to Fix It. If you see numbers or boxes on your screen, don't hear any sound, or can't use some keys on or your Mac wakes up from sleep on its own, there may be a simple explanation and an easy fix.
Hi, this is Gary with MacMost.com. Is your Mac not quite right? Here are 10 ways your Mac could be acting strangely and how to fix it. So often when people ask me questions, it's about something on their Mac that doesn't seem quite right. And sometimes the solution is pretty simple. For instance, let's say that things are suddenly moving very slowly on your Mac. There are a lot of different reasons for this, and I've got whole videos on this subject. But two of the main reasons are space on your drive or browser tabs. So to check space on your drive, go to System Settings and then go to General and Storage. And here you're going to see how much storage you're using. If you have less than 10 or 20 gigs available, it's probably going to make your Mac run slowly. Ideally, you should have 40 or 50 gigs, maybe even more available if you're using apps that you know are memory intensive. Your Mac uses space on the drive as overflow for memory. And when you don't have enough space available, it can't do that. It's called swap. And it can't swap if there's no space available on the drive. So if your Mac is running slowly, free up more space over here on the right by archiving old files or deleting things you no longer need. But the next most common reason is probably browser tabs. People don't realize that each tab in a browser is kind of like a separate app. So you may think, oh, I only have a few apps open, just Mail, Notes, and my browser. Why is my Mac running slowly? But if your browser has 20 tabs, that's like 20 different apps running at the same time. It's really easy to go to a tab and close it and simply return to the page later. If it's a page you use often, you could add it to bookmarks if you like, but you don't need to keep tabs open all the time. If your Mac is running slowly, try to reduce your reliance on leaving tabs open for web pages you're not currently using. Now, this one I hear all the time. It's when the keyboard isn't working right. And if I ask more questions, it turns out most keys work right, like this. But then when you get to certain keys, you don't get anything. It doesn't actually work. They press the key, like the U key, I, O, or J, or K, or L, and you don't get those characters. So when it's those specific characters on your keyboard, what's happening here is something called mouse keys. So you go into System Settings, and then go to Accessibility, and then go down to Motor, and not keyboard, but pointer control, because mouse keys is a way to use the keyboard to move the pointer. You can see I've got it turned on here. It'll allow you to use certain keys on your keyboard to move the pointer around, but that means you can't use them to type. So if I simply turn off mouse keys, then I can now use those keys as before. People don't often look here because they think, well, I didn't go through all of that to turn it on. But there are shortcut ways to turn on mouse keys that you may have accidentally triggered, and now you've got mouse keys on without ever having gone to System Settings. But another reason the keyboard could be acting strangely is if you go to System Settings and then go to where you would expect, Keyboard, and then look under Input Sources and click Edit. Here for most people, you should just see one listing on the left, and that's the keyboard that you have. But if, say, you were in here playing around with this and you added another keyboard and switched to it, it could make the keys on your keyboard work differently. For instance, adding the French keyboard here, you could see how the A key is in the upper left-hand corner instead of Q, which is now below it. So suddenly it seems like some of the keys work and others don't. So make sure you have the right keyboard selected to match the keys that are shown on your physical keyboard, and perhaps you remove any that you're not actually using. By the way, if you find these videos valuable, consider joining the more than 2,000 others that support MacMost at Patreon. You get exclusive content, course discounts, and more. You can read about it at macmost.com/Patreon. Here's another way things could look very weird indeed. Many times I had people say they're suddenly seeing numbers all over the screen. What are they and how can they get rid of them? Well, this is another accessibility feature. I'm going to go into System Settings and then go to Accessibility again. And this one is Voice Control. And you can see here I have Voice Control turned on. And there are shortcuts that allow you to turn this on without going to System Settings. So you could have accidentally turned it on. And you can see it's actually showing an overlay with item numbers. So if you have this on and you don't need voice control, simply turn off voice control and those numbers will go away. Here's another odd thing you might see. Text that just appears in these boxes. Here you can see that wherever I move my pointer, I get text showing me either the text that's under the pointer or sometimes the names of buttons and things like that. This is another thing people accidentally turned on, and it's called hover text. So go into System Settings here and Accessibility, and then look for hover text. And you can turn it off here. Note that it also has a mode where it only shows what's under the pointer when you hold down a key like the Command key. So as you're going to do things like Command C for copy, it suddenly appears. Here's another Mac feature that people sometimes turn on by accident and then can't figure out what's going on. Your manager, but you turn it on accidentally, you may not know what's going on here with suddenly windows being here on the left like this. And if you select one of them, it replaces what's there and then that window flies over there. Sometimes you don't even see these windows here. Like if I go to Safari, Safari is too big, so it actually hides those items here and then they pop out here on the left. Now, if you use Stage Manager, this all makes perfect sense. This is what you want. But if you've never used Stage Manager before and you turn it on, suddenly everything seems very different. You can simply turn off Stage Manager by going to Control Center and then look for the Stage Manager button. Click that and it turns it off, and everything returns to the normal mode where you just see multiple windows from multiple apps overlapping. Sometimes you may put your Mac to sleep and find it doesn't go to sleep, or after putting it to sleep, at some point it wakes up. And this could be for several reasons. One simply could be that an app is waking it up. If you go to Activity Monitor, launch that app, and then you go to Energy, you'll see here, Preventing Sleep. Look in that column and see if any of the apps you currently have running, even things running in the background, have a yes. In this case, for instance, the screen recording software I'm using is preventing sleep, but I normally wouldn't be screen recording and expect my Mac to go to sleep. But if you see yes next to some other app, know that you've got to quit that app in order for your Mac to stay asleep. But another reason may simply be your mouse. A lot of third-party mice are very sensitive, and if they're sitting on a desk and there's slight vibrations that make the mouse move, even imperceptibly, it may wake up your computer. If your mouse has an off switch, try switching it off and see if your Mac will sleep better with your mouse switched off. Here's another issue that comes down to an accessibility feature. Say you suddenly can't see your entire Mac screen. You can go to the top and there's the menu bar, and you can go to the bottom and there's the dock, but the entire screen isn't on your physical display at one time. That simply could be that you have turned on Zoom. So go again to System Settings and then Accessibility, and then look for Zoom and turn that off. Now, this happens when you have Zoom style set to full screen, but if you have it set to something like picture-in-picture, you may see something like this, which is also Zoom. And this is also kind of strange if you don't know what it is. But if you don't need it, simply turn it off and that will go away. Now, let's say you go to a web page and this is what you expect to see. Here's one of my pages, and you could see here's the video and comments below and everything. But what happens if you go to a web page and instead of this, you see something like this? In this case, the video is missing. It seems to be missing a lot of the different features there. You can't figure out why you're not seeing all the navigation elements and regular things you would expect. This is simply because you have Reader View turned on. You can see this little indicator here showing that you do, and you can hide Reader. You can also go to View, and this is where you show Reader or hide Reader, and you can see the keyboard shortcut Shift-Command-R. Using Reader View is great when you're reading an article and just want to focus on the text, but for pages that have more complex elements, it could really mess them up and make them impossible to use or figure out how to accomplish something on the page. Now, if you always go to a website and it's always in Reader View, it's probably because in Safari settings under websites and then look for Reader here at the top, you've got it set to maybe always be on. So look for the website there and see if you've set it to be always on. That means anytime you go to that site, it's going to automatically be in Reader View. You can either set it to always be off on that site or simply select it and remove that from the list of preferences. Then the website will just act normally. Now, another problem you could have is something that doesn't appear to be on your screen at all, but something that has to do with your keyboard. You've got the keys at the top of your keyboard, the F keys, F1 to F12 or more if you've got an extended keyboard. And they also have special symbols on the top. And you may be used to using those to do one of those special features. Like, for instance, the F12 key turns the volume up, while F11 will actually turn the volume down. But then all of a sudden, it's not working. Those keys don't turn the volume up or down. Or conversely, you may use F11 and F12 for special functions inside of some apps that say the keyboard shortcut for a certain thing is F11 and F12. And they work fine, and then suddenly they don't. Instead, it's controlling volume. These keys have two modes. Think of how the letter keys work, like the A key. When you press A, you get a lowercase a. Hold the Shift key down and press A, and you get an uppercase A. The F keys at the top do the same thing. They'll do one thing when you just press them. But if you hold the FN or globe key down, then they do the other thing. So it's the FN or globe key, not the Shift key, that modifies these. If you go into System Settings and then go down to Keyboard, go to Keyboard Shortcuts, and then look for Function Keys, you'll find the toggle switch here. This toggles whether or not they are F keys, like F1 and F2 when you press them normally. And then you need the globe or FN key to use the features shown on them. Or the features, like volume up and volume down, are the default. And the FN or globe key needs to be used to switch them to things like F11 and F12. You can have it toggled either way and just use the FN and globe key to get to the other set of functionality. But it's good to understand how this toggle switch works and why those keys may have changed on you if you've changed this toggle. And finally, let's talk about sound. Say sound on your Mac is working fine, and then all of a sudden it isn't. The videos are playing without any sound. You play music and you don't get any sound. You don't hear any system beeps or anything. Now, of course, it could be just that you've turned your volume all the way down. So you can turn it up using the volume keys on your keyboard, or you could go here into Control Center and you can adjust your volume right here. But also, it could be because you've switched the output. So it's sending the sound to a different device. If I click here in Control Center, it actually will allow me to choose the output. And you can see I've got a lot of different things here. And you may have, say, a set of external speakers or even headphones attached. You would see all of these here, and you may have switched to one. Like, for instance, the sound could be playing out of headphones, and you're not actually wearing those headphones, which is why you don't hear the sound. Or maybe you switched to a different display that doesn't actually have the volume turned up or the speakers enabled. So go here to choose the output. You could also get to this by going to System Settings and then looking for Sound here on the left, and you've got Output here, and you could choose where the output goes to. The same thing is true for microphones. If you go to Input, you may have multiple microphones here. For instance, I've got two, the ones on my Mac's display and also a separate external microphone. If you've switched to one, and many apps allow you to switch inside that app, so you may not realize you switched it. Now suddenly when you try to record with your microphone, it's not working. So check to make sure the right input source is set there, and also that your input volume is turned up. A common thing might be to have this turned all the way down for some reason. Maybe you accidentally turned it down when video conferencing and you used it as a way to kind of mute your mic and you forgot that. So make sure this is turned up a decent amount so that you've got input, and you could test that right here. You could see the input level as you speak, so you can get your input right before returning to the app that you were using to record. So there were 10 very common problems that people have with their Macs that make things act strangely, but are hard to figure out. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching.
Comments or questions?
There's some good stuff in there.
Yes, there's lots going on. That mouse keys issue was something I'd never heard of before.
Thing that jumped out at me is a little tip about
Right.
Command Shift R to go to toggle reader view. I've always
Right.
found it annoying that clicking the reader view button at the top of the Safari page, then you have a second click to turn on reader view. It was like, why do I have to do 2 clicks there? But Command Shift R bypasses that. It just goes straight to reader view. I like that.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, the fourth video is by Tom Wells from Proper Honest Tech. 10 amazing things that your iPad can do right now. Here's 10 tips and tricks for the iPad I wish I knew years ago, he says.
I'm going to keep the intro very short in this video. You know what you're here for, tips for the iPad. And I reckon I've got 10 in this video that, despite the iPad being out for years now, most people don't know. Okay, let's get into it. If you go into Settings and choose Multitasking and Gestures and make sure that Split View and Slide Over is enabled, let me show you probably the easiest way to make use of Split View. So what I might do is open Safari, and you can see that Safari takes up the entirety of my iPad display. Then let's say I want to quickly play some music using Apple Music. I'd swipe up gently from the bottom to bring up the dock, then go to my app library. Once I've found the music app, I'm going to long press on the icon and just drag it over to the left-hand side of the screen and let go. You'll now see that I've got full access to the entire music app in a little iPhone-style window here on the left-hand side. I could also drag that over to the right if I prefer it there instead. Then I might decide that I want to quickly check my email. I'd go back to the dock, long press on the mail icon and drag it over to the same space. Now I've got the mail app open as well. What people don't necessarily realize is that both apps, music and mail, are stacked here on top of Safari. To switch between them, swipe up for just a second like you would if you were using the app switcher on your iPhone. Then just tap on the one that you want to bring to the front. When you're done with an app, tap the 3 dots at the top, choose close, and you'll go back to just having Safari open. If you're someone who already uses multitasking in Safari on your iPad, you'll know that tapping the 3 dots at the top of the screen shows all of your open Safari windows along the bottom, and you can swipe between them or swipe up to close any that you're done with. But if you accidentally swipe up and close a window that still had a bunch of tabs that you were using, there is a way to get it back, even though it's not immediately obvious. All you need to do is come out of Safari and long press on the Safari icon, whether that's in your dock or on your home screen. From the menu that appears, tap Show All Windows. In the top left corner of the screen, you'll see a plus button and a Reopen Closed Windows button. Tap this and your recently closed Safari windows will reopen, including the one that you just accidentally closed, tabs and all. You probably already know that you can create quick notes on your iPad. I've got mine set up so that swiping up from the bottom right corner, either with my finger or my Apple Pencil, creates a brand new quick note ready to go. But did you know that once the quick note is open, you can use 2 fingers to pinch out, just like you would with a photo, and the quick note will expand in size. On something like the 11-inch iPad, this can make the quick note take up almost half of the screen. If you want to shrink it back down again, just pinch in with 2 fingers, and then you can drag the quick note to any of the 4 corners of your display. So you can position it exactly where you want while you're working. If your iPad supports the Apple Pencil Pro and you've got one, there's a feature you might not be making the most of. You probably already know that you can double tap near the tip of the pencil to trigger an action, and you can change what that action does. Just go into Settings, tap on Apple Pencil, then under the Action section, tap into Double Tap and choose what you want it to do, like show the color palette, switch to the eraser, or bring up the last tool that you used. But if you tap back, you'll also see something called Squeeze. This does exactly what it sounds like. You gently squeeze near the bottom of the pencil, and you'll feel a subtle haptic tap to confirm that it's worked. All the same options from Double Tap are available here too, but Squeeze adds something extra, Shortcut. Tap into this, and you can pick from any shortcut that you've created on your iPad. So for example, you might assign it to launch a voice chat with ChatGPT, create a new note in the Notes app, or even begin recording a voice memo with a single squeeze. And because it's tied into the Shortcuts app, you can set it to trigger pretty much anything, making the Apple Pencil Pro far more powerful than just a drawing and writing tool. A question I get all the time on my YouTube videos these days is, how are you supposed to scan a QR code when that QR code is actually showing in a video on the device you're watching it on? So for example, if the QR code is showing on your TV and you're holding your iPad, that's really easy. You can just scan the code using your iPad camera. But what happens if the code is showing in a video that you're watching on your iPad and the iPad is the only device that you have available? The answer is actually really simple. All you do is pause the video at the point where the QR code is showing and make sure the code is clearly visible on screen. Then take a screenshot. You can do that by pressing the volume up and the power button together, or if you're like me, you can swipe up from the bottom left corner of the screen to take a screenshot. When the screenshot appears, look at the menu bar at the top of the screen and you'll see a live text button. Tap on this and the QR code is considered part of the live text. Tap on that and the QR code will open right away in Safari. If the feature is supported in your country and language, there was a feature added to iPadOS 18 called Safari Highlights. This essentially scans the web page that you're viewing and pulls out important information like an address or phone number and then presents it in a typical Apple fashion, saving you from having to browse around a website when all you want to do is give the business a call or quickly navigate to their location. To make use of this, you'll first need to enable highlights. Go into Settings, choose Apps, then tap on Safari. Scroll almost all the way to the bottom of the page, and in the Privacy and Security section, you'll see an option called Highlights. Toggle this on. Then when you're on a website in Safari, you might notice the Safari Options button to the left of the address bar has a couple of stars on it. That's Safari's way of letting you know that there are highlights available on this page. Tap on that, and anything relevant will show up. The amount and quality of the highlights will vary depending on your region and the website that you're on, but in general, I've used this a few times to quickly get location information for a business or grab a phone number without having to scrape through the website looking for it. Taking screenshots on an iPad isn't quite as straightforward as it is on the iPhone. Yes, it's the same combination of buttons, power button and volume up, but because of the way those buttons are positioned, especially on the larger iPads, it can be really fiddly. A much easier method is to just swipe up from the bottom left of the screen. It works whether you're in portrait or landscape mode, and as soon as you do it, the screenshot is captured and you're taken straight into the editing tool where you can crop, mark up, or zoom in as needed. But you do need to enable this gesture first. So head into Settings, tap Multitasking and Gestures on the left, then scroll all the way to the bottom. Look for the setting called Swipe Finger from Corner. Here you can choose whether the screenshot gesture happens from the bottom left or the bottom right corner. You can even assign a different function entirely, like creating a quick note. That's actually how I've got mine set up, with screenshots from the left and quick notes from the right. Or if you prefer not to use this gesture at all, you can turn it off completely. If you use your iPad with an external keyboard, whether it's a Magic Keyboard, a Bluetooth keyboard, or even your Mac's keyboard through Universal Control, there's a really handy shortcut that lets you view all of the keyboard shortcuts available in the app you're using. Just press and hold the Command key, and a window will appear showing a full list of shortcuts specific to that app. In many apps, you'll also see a tab bar at the bottom that lets you swipe or tab between different categories. So in the Mail app, for example, you'll find shortcuts for Mail, Editing, Mailbox, Message, Window, and View. It's a really useful way to learn what your keyboard can do in each app. In the Books app, there's a really handy feature called the Line Guide, which can be great if you find it hard to stay focused on just one line of text, or if large blocks of text feel a bit overwhelming. To try this out, open a book in the Books app and look for the little menu button in the bottom right corner. It's the one that looks like 2 lines with 3 dots underneath. Tap that, and at the bottom of the menu that appears, you'll see the Line Guide icon. It looks like 4 lines with one of them outlined. Tap on it, and the Line Guide will appear across your screen. In the bottom left corner, you'll now see the Line Guide button again. Tap it, and you'll get options to control how much of the rest of the screen you want to dim. You can choose none, which doesn't make a huge difference to be honest, or you can pick low, medium, or high, depending on how much you want the surrounding text to fade into the background. To move the guide itself, just tap above or below it to shift it up or down line by line. And when you're done, just tap the Line Guide icon again in the bottom left and choose Turn Off Line Guide to go back to normal reading mode. Apple now lets you set your default apps on the iPad more easily than ever. Just open Settings, scroll right down and tap on Apps. At the top of this next screen, tap into Default Apps. This gives you access to 8 categories where you can change the default app. So for example, if you want to use a different email app, tap Email and select any compatible apps that you've already installed on your iPad. From then on, whenever you create a new email, it'll open in the app that you chose rather than Apple's built-in Mail app. You can also change the default app for messaging, phone calls, including iPhone call forwarding and call filtering, your web browser, translation, password manager, and even your keyboard. And for keyboards, you'll also be able to enable any additional ones that you've installed from this screen. So there you go, 10 tips for the iPad that I reckon most people have no clue about. What about you? Any in here that caught you by surprise? Or any that you think should have been included? Drop me a comment and let me know. And as ever, if you found this video useful, do please consider leaving me a like and subscribing to my channel for more content like this in the future.
Answer a question.
Well, there's a lot of good information there, but you can't remember it. You're going to have to go through that and try it on every one of those things.
Yeah, that's right. But you have access to it from the BBS. But I think that line guides item would be nice over paragraph guide. Embolden the paragraph.
I like to swipe up from the left bottom corner to take a screenshot. I just turned that on. The iPad works great.
Yeah, right. And by holding the command key down and finding off the keyboard shortcuts on a given app is also pretty neat. Yeah, there's lots of item in there, a lot of stuff in there.
What's his name or what's his deal called?
His his website is Proper Honest Tech, and his name is Tom Wells.
The stuff he shared about the split view and stuff, that's all going to change in iOS 26 because it's all going to go away and they're just going to go to windowing, overlapping window messages like the Mac, windows like the Mac. They're throwing all that out.
I was glad to see
Videos by
the
Gary. How to find missing symbols on your Mac keyboard. If you are using an input source setting that doesn't match your physical keyboard, it can be hard to figure out how to type some basic characters. Here's how to check to see exactly what character each key on your keyboard maps to.
Hi, this is Gary with MacMost.com. Let me show you how to find out how to type characters with your keyboard, even when the characters that you type don't match the characters printed on the keys. So this is a common question I get and you see posted to forums. Somebody wants to type a character, but they can't figure out how. It's not a special symbol or emoji or anything like that. As a matter of fact, it may be a character that's actually printed on the keyboard, but when they try to press that key or maybe shift plus that key, that's not what they get when they type. Usually this happens when you have your Mac set to use a keyboard for a language different than the one that is printed on your keyboard. For instance, you may have a US keyboard, but maybe you're in Quebec, Canada, and you have your keyboard set to French Canadian. In that case, you may find that what you type doesn't match what you see on the keys. For instance, I'm going to type the slash key, the one on US keyboards that's to the right of the period. When I do that, you can see I don't get the slash symbol. If I type the left square bracket, I get this. And if I type shift and 2, I get this, not the @ symbol. This is because I've changed my settings. You can actually see that up here. In the menu bar, I've got this little menu here, and you can see how I can switch between these two keyboards. You may or may not see this in your menu bar depending on your settings. Let's investigate further. Going into system settings here, I can go down to keyboard, and in keyboard, I look for text input, and then it shows input sources. And here you can see it says US and Canadian PC. If I click edit, then I get a list here on the left. Now you may only see one keyboard listed here, but I've got two, meaning I've told my Mac that I'm going to switch back and forth between two different keyboard layouts. If I use the US keyboard layout, then the letters printed on my keyboard will match what I type. If I choose the Canadian PC keyboard, then things are going to be a little different. And this control up here allows me to switch between them without going to system settings. So if I go back to all input sources here, I get all these different settings for the keyboard. And one of the things here is show input menu and menu bar. So that determines whether or not that is there. So now when I have it set to Canadian PC, I type shift 2, I get this. But if I change to US and I type shift 2, I get the @ symbol, which since I happen to have a US keyboard, that's what's actually printed there above the 2 on that key. By the way, if you find these videos valuable, consider joining the more than 2,000 others that support MacMost at Patreon. You get exclusive content, course discounts, and more. You could read about it at macmost.com/Patreon. So you should get exactly what you see on your keyboard as long as your input source settings on your Mac are set to the same as your actual physical keyboard. But if you switch to another input source like this, then you can use the keyboard you've got to type like it was a different keyboard. So the question is, since the symbols on the keyboard don't match the symbols you get when you type, how can you figure out how to type some things? Like if I want to type the @ symbol, no amount of pressing shift 2 is going to bring that up. So let's go back into system settings here and then go back to keyboard and go back to input sources again by clicking edit. Now if I select a keyboard here, notice I get a representation of the keyboard. This is great because it helps you match up what you see on your physical keyboard with what this input source expects. So this is what I get if I just were to type any of the keys. However, I can hold the shift key down and this will change. And this is what I get when I use the Shift key and type any of those keys. You can see here the 2 key changes to an @ symbol. I can also hold the Option key down and see what I get, and the Shift and Option together to see what I get. If I switch to another keyboard like this one, then you can see things will change. If I hold the Shift key down here, you can see the 2 gives you a double quote. So how do I get the @ symbol? Well, you have to search for it. You only have 4 variations. No modifier key held down, the Shift key held down, the Option key held down, and the Shift and Option key held down. In this case, I can spot the @ symbol if I hold the Option key down, and I notice that Option 2 gives me the @ symbol. So if the keyboard's still set to Canadian PC, I can hold Option and press 2, and that's how I get the @ symbol. I can see here those other symbols that take the place of the left and right brackets. So if I hold Shift down and Option down, I can find the square brackets. It's Option and those keys that gets me them. And holding the Shift down plus Option gets me the curly brackets. And it's the same for any other keyboard. If I choose Spanish here, for instance, I could choose Latin American Spanish, Spanish, or Spanish Legacy. And I even get a little representation down here before I select it. So this is what the Latin American keyboard will give me. You can see some of the keys are different. If I choose Spanish, then there's some other changes, in Spanish Legacy, some other changes. If I choose Swedish right here, I can see those. And for each version, here's the Korean keyboard. You can see there are 5 variations of those. Not all of these will match up to a keyboard that Apple or other companies make. It may only be one out of the set, or maybe even none of them. But this is going to show you the representation of how your physical keyboard will work if it's set to use one of these languages, if it's set to a different input source. So next time you need to figure out how to type a basic character, head to System Settings, Keyboard Input Sources, click the Edit button, and then look for it here by holding down the different modifier keys. And remember, if you need something beyond that, just use Control, Command, and Space, or use the FN or globe key and E, and then you could search for emoji, but also all the Unicode characters here. So for instance, I can search for something like question and get various different question marks here this way. And of course, most of these are things that you can't just regularly type with the keyboard. They're special characters that you need to access this way. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching.
Well, comments or questions?
Good.
I recently somehow had the French keyboard selected. I'm not sure when that happened. And I'm typing away and it's coming out crazy. So it was, yeah, going to keyboards and settings, I was able to fix it, but yeah.
It makes me miss a thing called PopCare that let me just go through everything. That was a nice feature in older OSs.
That was, but not cheap. Is PopCare still around?
I don't think so.
With this keyboard viewer.
PopCar put a little tiny clickable thing up on the top left corner of your screen by the Apple.
Yep.
And you click there and it showed you all the things and you could just click on what you wanted.
Was it much different than keyboard viewer?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You didn't have to worry where to punch it on the keyboard. You could just scroll through till it was the one you wanted and just tap and it would insert the character.
So does anybody use ABC extended instead of US?
I don't know.
I have both of them, and it seems like the only difference that I see is that the Option Shift characters are different in ABC extended from US. I think they're more international characters or something.
You know, I was trying to figure out, so if you do add another keyboard and you're looking at the US keyboard, it's kind of hard to figure out where the real keys are. I mean, the keyboard keys that you actually selected, French, for example, or Spanish. It's one thing on iOS which changes instantly. Whichever keyboard it actually the keyboard itself changes, but the wired keyboard or uh, on a Mac, those keys are US, so you're kind of on your own at that point.
I guess if you did it a lot and you didn't have the keyboard memorized, you could buy a keyboard with the right keycaps on it.
I can see where Peter went, kind of confusion in there, saying, what is typing here? I know I'm typing the right thing and different characters are coming out.
I wonder if anybody makes a keyboard, one of those plastic covers, people use to keep their keyboard clean with different language keycaps printed on it.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right, move on to miscellany. 2 miscellany items this week. 8 reasons to switch to Chrome. I know there was discussion last week on Chrome. I wanted to give someone the one person's rationale in that regard. The second item is hundreds of Brother printer models have an unpatchable security flaw, which, thanks to Rick, is presented here. The reasons to switch to Chrome. According to Alex Blake from Mac, who's a Macword contributor, he says there are these reasons to prefer Chrome. It has better extension support. It syncs across all devices and platforms. It is integrated with Google's other services. It gets faster updates. Its memory management isn't all that bad. It has more customization options. Chrome is more private than you think, and it gets an awesome Safari feature in iOS 26. Well, there's a lot of opinion writing for each of these items, and we're going to say nothing more about them here except to say that you can access that by going to this website and then to Apple Breakfast, and then go down the page to the trending top stories, and then you go to attention Safari users and click on switch to Chrome, and you will be able to get all of his rationale for thinking there's 8 reasons to switch to Chrome.
Does anybody here like Chrome better than Safari?
No.
I don't, but I use it. There are certain websites that will not let you log in unless you use Chrome. And I came across a couple, but outside of that, I use Safari.
I've been using Chrome lately for my schoolwork because they recommended not using Safari.
Right. I was going to say the same thing here in Napa. They won't let you use you have to use a Chrome.
Are those PC oriented places?
That's true.
Now that has to do with the classroom management software that they're running. They don't want to support another browser, so they restricted the Chrome. Something else about when you're taking online tests and features they can put in security in Chrome while you're running a test.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, when I did my online bachelor's degree, I found that out from the IT people.
If you're using an older Mac OS than 3 versions that doesn't get updates for Safari, then your Safari tends to get out of date, where Chrome and Firefox are still being updated way more years after that on older OSs. So you'll find that Safari starts to stop working more and more places where Chrome is still being updated.
And also Chromium Legacy.
Chromium Legacy, unfortunately, which ran on super old computers all the way back to El Capitan, it was being updated regularly, and it stopped being updated. So about 6 months ago, it just stopped. It's the end. It still works good, but they're not moving forward with it. But on old computers, really old computers, it works as Chromium, as Google Chrome.
No.
So, but unfortunately, that's probably going to end at some point because it's not getting updates anymore.
I use Firefox,
which is still being updated for pretty far back. Still working. And in fact, they have a version they're updating called ESR, end of service release. So you don't get any new features, but you get all the security updates.
No.
So they're still supporting that.
The biggest frustration I've had with Safari is on some merchant sites. You go through the whole buying process where you enter all your information, you enter your credit card, you do all those steps, then you get to the final buy button and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes when I've complained about something like that, they tell me to erase the cache, delete the cache, and it works.
Okay.
But I always worry if the Mac only has, either delete it or don't delete it. You can't just do cache and not history, and it seems like that's could be inconvenient.
Unfortunately, Chrome pretty much works everywhere because it's the most popular browser in the world.
Yeah.
So it's the most supported.
That was one of his points. Okay, moving on. Hundreds of Brother printer models have an unpatchable security flaw. This points out the title caption on this article talks about Brother printers, but it turns out this is true some other manufacturers also. And to my surprise, I find out some other manufacturers are using the Brother the Brother production system for making their computers as well. Thanks to Rick Calcara for alert to this important vulnerability in dozens of printers. Notably to many of us, that includes the Brother laser printer series. Hundreds of Brother printers have been an unpatchable security flaw, according to Jess Weatherbed of TheVerge.com. The article strongly recommends firmware update and change of printer administrator's password. To update your firmware on your printer, simply go to support.brother.com and follow the guidance to download and install a firmware update for your particular printer. To change your printer administrator's password, you log in to the web control for your printer as follows. You go to HTTPS, and then in the next section, you put your printer IPS address. That is the numbers, your IP address you put in there. Using the default password the factory is installed on your printer. Guidance on this procedure is provided on the BBS in the miscellany 250701 document. If you want to read more on it, you can click on the URL and read more details and be directed to a list of all computers affected, and there are hundreds.
So if you can update the firmware and that fixes the problem, then it isn't unpatchable.
No, the firmware doesn't get everything. That's the point in the second comment.
Just to add to that, mine's about 6 months old. It automatically updated a couple of days ago.
Oh, it did.
I
What's
tried
the
to print.
nature, what's the nature of the security flaw?
I don't know. Rick, do you know?
Apparently, with the standard password, people are able to find a vulnerability where they can get into your system through the printer. The printers all seem to have the same password, which is initpass, INITPASS. You may want to change that, which will enhance your line of defense.
Yeah, I did.
Also, the firmware update will enhance your line of defense. And I'm not sure that they really know whether that fixed it or not. That's why they called it unpatchable.
Okay.
But this would only apply to if you're using Ethernet, right? This doesn't apply if you're hooked up being USB.
No, Wi-Fi.
Right, Ethernet or Wi-Fi network. If you're not using Wi-Fi and you have a USB, then that's
Right.
when the Wi-Fi is turn the Wi-Fi off if you're not using it, and then it won't have one IP that they can't connect.
I suspect you're probably right. But
Yeah,
where I am, I'm printing from an iPhone, an iPad, and 2 Macs wirelessly.
Yeah, unfortunately, mine's Wi-Fi connected, and so is Rick's probably because
Yeah.
Mine's on Ethernet.
So you don't have to print to it from other devices?
Well, no, I've got actually, it'll print, it's hooked up on Ethernet, but it'll print other devices that are on my network. Like the iPhone or the iPad, it'll print that because they're on my Wi-Fi net, they're on my network.
Ah.
I just have the printer hooked up hardwired instead of Wi-Fi. But they're all on the same network.
Yeah.
So that would still be vulnerable if it's on Ethernet, right?
Probably.
Yeah. So my
Yeah.
question is, how are they getting past your router?
Router, right?
You have an internal IP address. You don't have a public IP address on your internal devices. Your Macs, it's a 192 or a 10 dot address. It's not an internet public address. Your router is in the way there.
I don't know.
Well, like on HP printers, they have like a feature, I think they call it AirPrint, where you can print from outside your network.
Yeah, Brother has that.
Right.
In fact, it actually uses AirPrint drivers. Apple names them with the name of the printer, but they're actually AirPrint drivers.
So maybe that's where the vulnerability is.
Yeah, because Brother hasn't made their own driver for their printers for the last couple of Mac operating systems, or last several systems. They use AirPrint.
Would make sense on any.
Accommodated them by naming it for the printer, but it's still AirPrint.
Makes sense to not have any devices, routers, or whatever set with the default admin password.
Well, I've changed my printer password number, and I've changed the login to their web-based page password as well.
Well, not everybody perhaps is real aware of what their printer IP address is, and also that default password the factory installed in your printer. On the BBS, I have provided guidance on how to obtain those two items. Rick says that there's this one, maybe universal, called INITPASS, initpass.
Right.
You might want to write that down if it works for you. Otherwise, if you follow the guidance on the BBS, you can see the actual default password, the password for your printer, and that one should work as well.
And where is it exactly on the BBS?
It's
I
in the
posted this
document
morning
with the
under miscellaneous items.
The new Brother printers have a password imprinted on the back of the printer itself.
Yeah, right.
That's true. Mhm. Sometimes it's hard to get under or behind.
Yeah, especially on a colored laser printer.
Yes.
I just
You
put the
don't know
document,
until you
I
get
put
it
them,
installed.
I
Then you
just,
figure out that, oh, that's where it is.
I just put the miscellanea PDF in the chat.
Thank you.
And it's also on the BBS. On to question and answers and social hour.
I'm looking on the BBS and I'm not sure where to find it.
Look in the meeting notice or Lee's, it's part of the package, news, videos, miscellaneous, there's
Okay.
3 of them.
Yeah, it's his email to
It's in the
DVMUG.
chat, I just put it in the chat, it's the last item. Okay, so you can stop sharing your screen and we'll stop the recording. And DVMUG members, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can get the next recording of the Q&A with a link that will be on the BBS, and we'll then stop the recording and start a new one.